Good morning, Internet.
Hello, Internet.
It is, in fact, the morning. For once, we have our coffee, we have our brains, and we have our love of all things nerdy.
Today I know something that's nerdy. It's our main topic. It's about video games that should be books. That's a bit of a relative definition there, but since Andrew probably has more of an opinion on this and created the topic, I guess you should go first.
Thank you, Matthew. Yes, so, unfortunately, after 3 episodes, we kind of ran out of things we ran out of topics very briefly, and we were kind of drawing up blanks, so I was just, I was in the shower, actually, and I had an idea. I was thinking,
Shower thoughts by Andrew.
Shower Thoughts by Andrew. I mean, there's already a Twitter account that's just Shower Thoughts, but it's like Shower Thoughts by Andrew. It's like when you see like one of those like you see at Target, it's like Target clothes by this designer. It's like that. It's like it's still Target, but hey, it was done by some Italian dude. Those are my shower thoughts. But
We get to share your shower thoughts with the world.
so I was thinking that um, this is more or less me. I was working on an idea for those of you who I think listened to the first episodes or know should know that I am in fact a dungeon master, and as part of that, I am going to say looking for it as just as Matthew has a sister channel to this channel. I am going to have a sister channel where it'd be me streaming my campaign with my group, my group of mostly girls, and we have a fantastic time defying all the visions of basement neckbeards. We actually have a really fun group, and we're getting ready to start a new campaign because two of our team members are moving to Paris for a while. So
Do
while
you
they're
hate when that happens?
I hate it when people move to Paris without telling me. Well, actually, they told me well in advance. But so that's gonna be fun. We're gonna be having a fun adventure. Unfortunately, without them. But so I hope you guys will tune in for that. And maybe who knows? Maybe I'll do a DMing tip video or just a complaint video or telling stories. Telling stories about it seems to be something that's not always done the most by a lot of people, but a lot of people seem to love just having someone tell stories. So anyway, I was having an idea. I was thinking about how could you turn the original Final Fantasy into a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. And after a while, I realized, well, I mean, there's not that much you can really. I mean, you can certainly, there's the four uh, gems.
Mage of the Light or whatever, the Heroes of
Yeah,
Light.
the Heroes of Light. It's sort of like that would kind of be it'd be a very like I think you could maybe pull it off in the older editions, because it is very basic. It's a
Well,
very
I played, yeah, I played a Game Boy port of it, port slash semi remake of it, and like I'm in the hour of it, and you go through a boss, and then you like, I'm not really sure what to do. Should probably play it more.
Mhm.
Like the complaint with that is just like it's too generic because it's like, and it's primitive too because like the technology and it like, what do you have to work off of? I mean, I'm sure you have an answer for that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do agree. So my thought was, well, it may or may not make a good campaign, but I was thinking like you could probably make it an interesting book because you could write all the things that they don't talk about. Because
That
because
puts some psychological realism, or at least like realistic psychological reactions behind some of the more pulpy
yeah,
things of the entire game.
yeah, and because that's definitely one. I think that's one case where that would totally make sense. As you're saying, here we are. We're going around. There are four characters who basically all you get is a name, and I'm thinking like where do they come from? Why are they here? It's like the things that it doesn't answer. I feel like you could actually be able to make a convincing story out of. I was actually thinking it might be kind of fun to play through it again and do like a pulp fantasy running narrative, like a week by week catch up of like, here's what happened in written form. Just like,
I think it could work. I mean, like because That's kind of where the best fanfics come from, and that's one of Keeley's praises of the original Robert E. Howard manuscripts of Conan the Cimmerian came from. Like, he's pulpy, but he also explores psychology and philosophy. And really, I agree with him. I've been reading some of his books in like a big bound thing, which I don't know if it's 100% original because it
The
said
big
that.
the big Conan.
Yeah, it's like a big black edition by Golanx or something, the British publisher. I don't know if it's the original manuscripts. Apparently, those are the best, but I'm pretty impressed with what I read. And there's a little bit of H.P. Lovecraft. They knew each other, by the way. There's a little bit of
That makes
H.P.
sense.
Lovecraft.
A lot of writers know each other.
Yeah, but there's a lot of H.P. Lovecraft in there. It actually gets pretty interesting. Not exactly 100% realistic, but definitely interesting. I recommend him.
Hmm. I've never actually read Conan. Like I know of Conan. Like I know a good bit about Conan, but I've never actually read Conan.
I'm sure he had there's like at least one RPG tabletop based off of like the
Oh,
original writings.
yeah, there are a lot of people make a lot of older um, role playing YouTubers will talk about Conan as being sort of a inspiration for them, and like how they were going to run their early, like the early more hack and slash, loot and boot, all that. Like the ones where you kick down the door and you steal the goblin's treasure and you kill everything on your way back, and like
Yeah, that's Conan.
yeah, like the early editions, but less so the
The,
later
sem- the
ones.
70s stuff.
Yeah, like less so the later ones, because in the later ones everybody just wants to be the Avengers, which is kind of true. Because I even see that in my group a little bit. We want to be the Avengers, except for not. But yeah. So my thought was that the original Final Fantasy, I think, could make. I'm not sure if it would make a book, but I would think sort of a running. If you were able to do it, like sort of like a running travelogue, or even like. See, I'm not even sure you could get two books out of it, but I feel like if it was like a collection of short stories from varying perspectives, like sort of like here we are at this place from the fighter's point of view, and here we are at this place from the white mage's point of view, and of course the black mage would have to be a little bit insane because it's just a shadow cloaked person with red glowing eyes, white glowing
That's
eyes.
true. Like, what are they supposed to be? Like, they never clarify that. Except in Final Fantasy IX, but that's a different story.
Yes, it is.
Literally.
Well,
So,
yes,
well, I guess it's my turn, right?
yes, it is.
Okay. So, I'm actually going to Dungeons and Dragons as well. I usually don't because I don't know much about it, and I've never been much impressed with it. But that that's changed. Unsurprisingly, I found out these games through a J.G. Keighley review, not actually from a sci-fi review of a book called Roadside Picnic by a author in the Soviet Union. They
Interesting.
adapted to one of my absolute favorite movies of all time, Stalker, by Andrei Tchaikovsky, which made the more mainstream movie Solaris, the original one. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's like
That
the
sounds familiar.
like Steven Soderbergh did a remake in 2002. Um, that was the original one from the Soviet Union. It's one of those long art films, so
Uh-huh.
I'm not surprised you haven't heard of it. So he mentioned about like how video games are actually kind of disrespected as an art form, and that we should
Mm.
really ignore the platform and focus on the content. And even though, and some of the reasons why he formulates that video games are kind of more disrespected is that they are a new genre and people don't really know how to deal with them. And his joke is like it's sort of more like less takes 40 years for genre to mature. But the funny thing
40.
is the well, he said Site Assisted Cane that came out in 1941, and that's since the first like 1900 era experiments and movies in the 1910s like Birth of a Nation and um, that one Italian film like that had to do with like the fall of Rome or whatever. Like it, it takes a while, basically.
Interesting.
So yeah, so it's my two examples actually happen to be from Dungeons and Dragons, but they were video game adaptations. They're from the 20th century, so they're probably like very early
Okay.
examples. the end of the 20th century, Baldur's Gate, which came out in 1998, and a different one, which is considered better than it, came out by the same team a year later, Planescape Torment,
Oh, Planescape Tournament. Yeah.
which I heard is set in the Forgotten Realms universe. Can you tell
hmm
me anything about that, Andrew? Because you would know about this stuff.
I do. I know some about Forgotten Realms. It is one of sort of uh, when they first opened play. This is back when it was Gygax and Arneson. Back when
Yeah, they were still alive for another
back when they were still back when they were running when they just started TSR in the 70s. When you could still call him, but you could still just look up Gygax in the Wisconsin phone. Was it Wisconsin? I think it was phone book, and actually just call him to say, "Hey, I don't understand the rule on page 15." And it'd be,
Wow.
yeah, no, that was the thing you could do for a while. I mean, obviously you
You
can't
could
do it
do
anymore.
that. You could do that today with like customer support, like 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 Google Hasbro in like Rhode Island and like be like part of their
You
call
could
team.
call up Wizards of the Coast and be like, I can't imagine you'd get like a personal response like, "Hi, we don't understand how spell levels work," and the response from Wizards of the Coast is, "It's called the internet, idiot." No, but like,
I really think they should have a call center though for like Hasbro because they own it now and they're pretty big and they
does
could like make.
Hasbro own Wizards of the Coast still?
I think since 2008 when Gygax
Oh.
died because they could make money off of this. What I'm saying they'd do like $10 an hour or whatever. They make like good money. Okay.
Alrighty, so now that I have finally returned from my odyssey to the porcelain throne, I have returned. My quest is completed.
So what
Alrighty.
do you know about Forgotten Realms, Andrew, the fictional world? And
Okay,
I don't know if
so
you ever played through it.
I haven't actually. I even though I do my role playing experience is 85% with Pathfinder. So, and even then, I have never played a full campaign in Pathfinder's default setting of Galarian. Uh, but basically, Forgotten Realms was sort of the secondary setting to Dungeons and Dragons. The original setting, as conceived by Gary Gygax, was the Forgotten Realms. And sorry, did I say forgot? I meant Greyhawk. Greyhawk was sort of the first. That was the first edition.
And that was part of Forgotten Realms?
Uh, I can't remember exactly
I
how
think
it is
I
now.
remember hearing that, but like I
I
don't.
think it has been a long time. Let me just double check this because I always get confused about which is which. Evidently, in the late '90s, there was Wizards of the Coast undid. Basically, they removed a lot of the different settings that they would officially make stuff for.
Hmm.
But as far as I can tell, Greyhawk is still an opposite. Yeah, Greyhawk is not. It's no longer and what after the fourth edition of Dungeons and Dragons, it was no longer considered the default campaign setting.
Well, because people got sick of it.
But then they moved to the Forgotten Realms, which is so huge. I think it's very humorous because the Forgotten Realms is so much bigger than Greyhawk. So,
So Forgotten Realms really can't be summed up to what it necessarily is. Like I
yeah,
read
no.
that it was a bit like Tolkienist fantasy, but like in a like kind of a water planet like us, but like I don't know anything about it. Like I
I
literally
wouldn't
scrolled on it.
exactly say that. Again, I know I don't know too much about the Forgotten Realms. It's not my it's not. It's like because if it came down to mechanics and stuff, I could talk about mechanics. But when it comes down to campaign settings, I know much more. I know a little bit. I know some about Galarian. Like I don't know geography, but I know like a lot of the
Yeah.
celestial lore and stuff that I
Okay.
know.
Okay, that makes sense. But like for Planescape Torment, having not know a lot about it,
I
like
would
you
have to
control
assume it's in Greyhawk though.
that would
Just
make
to
sense. I
yeah.
think I read that somewhere. But like Planescape Torment, control a guy, name is Nameless One, who I don't know what species he is. I tried to look it up, but I couldn't find it. Kind of looks like an orc because actually remember seeing somewhere like in Sam's Club, like seeing his face and like think it looked demonic because it just looks so weird. It's just funny because now you have like orcs on the cover of World of Warcraft or when it
Yeah,
came out on PC. I wonder if that's like directly related to that because it like looked like that. They knew that there was some kind of like thing to sell it on because it looked like that, you know?
could be.
So I do know that he lost his memory and he has the ability to reincarnate. And the point of the game is that if I don't know if insta death is a thing, but like I know that if you die, you lose memory. So like you're trying not to die, and he's trying to investigate throughout Forgotten Realms, like where what his past memory is and what his purpose was for being created. And I think it can be can it actually has some apparently it did have a novelization I think in the early 2000s, but there are some advantage and disadvantage because from what my research tells me, it has a strong emphasis on doing and steering the character towards a certain plot line, and like with Dungeons and Dragons, like in alignment, like good neutral, chaotic evil, that kind of
Yeah.
thing, and a certain plot line, and possibly an ending. So like you can get a different plot for like different endings, sort of like Mass Effect with its like different endings.
Yes.
But that was actually, I don't even know if they invented that back then. That might actually be like one of the things like it helped popularize because I can't really think of another game in the 90s that had like alternate endings and alternate. Well, there's a Blade Runner game that came out in the 90s, but other than that, I really can't. And that was revolutionary as well, but I really can't think of any.
Mm.
Maybe did Silent Hill come out? Did that have like alternate endings?
Uh, I, I
I
know
don't know.
Silent Hill 2 did. The second
Okay.
Silent Hill. I know for a fact that it had different endings. I think the first one. I'm trying to think of it. I can't say for sure. Really, not the very first Silent Hill had different endings, but
That'll be for fans to figure out because I think that's
I know the
interesting.
second. I know the second one had the one where it was where you could like have the dog in the room, or you
The
could have
dog ending.
the dog ending. Yeah, that one was definitely the second one. For some reason, I was about to say there's one with the tofu, but that's Resident Evil.
So I think that's revolutionary, even if it's not the first. That to have that like, and it's weaved very well. It's not like a gimmick. It's like it's weaved into the exploration of the psychology and philosophy of the idea, which is fun because it's like if you look at it, like it's one of those top-down late '90s RPGs. Like when you look at people, which always been an eyesore for me, but like it has decent art direction and
Hmm.
apparently it's a good game outside of that.
Mm.
But I think it also can be a book, uh, not just because of the art design and the top-down camera style I don't like, but because it explores themes that are novelesque, like exploration themes of the nature, reality, identity through the
Mm.
Nameless One, psychological exploration of the character, and apparently like really good explorations of other characters that you can like NPCs that you can like kind of interact with.
Hmm.
I don't really know about. I haven't played it yet, so I really can't give any other information. It's on Steam. It's like $20. I feel like it's like one of those games, like especially since like school's starting for me, like you want to buy it like as soon as possible, but you know you can't. But I have the latest WarioWare game to hold me off anyway until
Yeah.
that. So,
I
like, do you know anything about it? Because like this is
uh
just from like
Bal-
purely
Bal-
research.
Baldur's Gate. I know some. It's in my Steam wish list.
Okay.
So it's more something that I'm waiting to experience. Like you, I've heard really good things about it. I know it's kind of a classic. It's considered sort of an RPG standard, but
And Planescape Torment, I've heard like basically, not unanimously, but near unanimous that it's better than.
yeah, it was an improvement. It's something that built off.
And it was actually popular. It's
Yeah,
funny because
both were
like
very popular.
it was just funny because like Keeley, like his big thing is like people can't recognize genius in fiction, but like that's like one of the few actually the things that like actually were popular. And I blame the fact that it had the Dungeons and Dragons brand behind it, but that's still pretty impressive. It's like one of the top selling PC games ever made.
Yeah, Baldur's Gate was huge, and also, I mean, like, but also at that time there was sort of a there was very much sort of a kick towards fantasy then, because you also had, you get all the success of this is right when World of Warcraft's getting ready to start. You have Neverwinter, which that was a thing. It's still a thing. It's still running out there somewhere, in case anybody
Oh, I'm
cares.
sure.
Neverwinter Nights is still
And I hate to say it, like there's also like that weird neo Wiccan thing going on in the late '90s, which I know probably wasn't related for the most part, but like just like a, and then you had the 2000, you had like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, like all the adaptations of things,
yeah.
and it's where people thought like post the '80s like it was satanic, but like I don't know, like you know what I'm saying, there was like a neo Wiccan thing going on, like maybe
Yeah,
like they're just like interested because I do know I don't know any Wiccans, but like they do like fantasy, but not in the way that we do. But they're not like it's not satanic to that. Like, gosh, we're gonna get really in trouble here. Like, kind of what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying, but I would rephrase it as saying that there's oftentimes magical settings are in fantasy are appreciated by people who believe in magic
Yes, like it's kind
in
of
the
like how
real
Buddhists
world.
like. Yes, it's kind of like how Buddhists like Star Wars, The Matrix, and Cloud Atlas. Not because those like have sort of some magical property to them, but it reflects their beliefs
It
in a way.
yes, it has similarities to their belief systems. That it has things that interact positively with their belief system. I think Star
And they
Wars is
could
pretty
and they could use
obvious
it and they could use it for possibly
example.
evangelizing or just an exploration of their theology, not so much that like there's some Wiccan conspiracy with Dungeons and Dragons.
That makes sense. That would make that to me. I mean, I don't know if we're offending anybody, but to me that seems
Probably.
like a. We probably are. I mean, at this point, like I, you know, send us mail. We may or may not read it. But I think that seems to me like that's not an unreasonable leap.
I just don't know it like how if that contributes much to sales. I mean, like there's a lot of Wiccans in the pagan isles, Ireland and UK, but like I said, like I don't know,
I
like
can
and it
neither
was a
confirm
trend,
nor deny that.
and it was a trend. So I don't know. I could only
It did have an increase in that time. Like there was a
yeah.
statistical increase in it. Because I that was interesting. That I had to do a paper about that a while ago. There was a sort of an increase in that time, but then it went back down.
Yeah, because it like for a lot of
Yeah,
people it was a trend. Like there was like I'm sure like today there's like some people who stuck with it.
yeah. There is, but it was there was a trying to remember exactly. There was some research I did. I can't remember it now. I have no idea where it is. But there was sort of a. It was sort of like there was like it was almost like sort of like a bell curve of
A Gaussian bell curve, yes.
yeah,
And if I read enough Nassim Taleb, those are misleading and short lived, and here we
yeah,
are, and they were short lived.
yeah. It was there was sort of a peak, but it was like but I don't remember where I read that. It was yeah, shoot. Well, it's not worth trying to remember.
Yeah.
So Baldur's Gate the book and Final Fantasy the book.
Well, my argument was more like Planescape Torment the book, but
Planescape Tournament the book.
I like the other too, but I
I'm
haven't played
not
either.
sure. I think you would if you did them, you'd probably do both.
Yeah, you would. You would have to, and I think
Yeah,
there were novelizations.
but you would want to do a more literary novelization.
Yes. But, uh, what kind of more art fantasy than what J.G. Keeley pejoratively calls pops fantasy, like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings.
Art fantasy would be nice, and I think that could work. I feel like an art fantasy. Like somebody actually did an art fantasy of a Dungeons and Dragons game. I feel like that
Oh
could
yeah.
actually really work out well.
I actually made up the term art fantasy because J.G. Keeley made up the term pop fantasy, which he
Oh,
actually kind of meant as a more of a pejorative funny thing. I was like, well, what would be the antonym of that? I guess like art fantasy, because like pop art.
I
I
like
don't
it.
know.
We claim it. We claim it now.
Yes,
This is our
along with
thing.
PG-12
With PG-12.
and that other term we dial-up punk.
Well, yeah, so we've officially claimed dial-up punk, art fantasy, and
PG
PG-12.
12.
See, look at us. We're making waves for our literal tens of fans. There we go. Uh, but no, that's good. Um, yeah, I'm thinking like another game that I weirdly enough think could kind of rework into a novel. The reason I keep going with old games is because I feel like they make it a little bit easier to move. The two that I think could actually kind of get worked into a game would be I feel like you could actually turn Castlevania into a very interesting book.
The very first one?
I'm not thinking of so much the very first one, but sort of like the. But then
I know
again,
nothing about.
Castlevania gets so weird.
Hmm.
Like in the late,
I know
so
nothing about that series. I'm sorry. Like, is it? It's RPG. It's not like.
it's not necessarily
Hmm.
RPG. It's sort of an. It's but you played Metroid, right? The early Metroids.
Yes.
It's similar to Metroid except with more RPG elements.
Okay. Interesting. I don't know if I'd be interested in necessarily. I heard the newer like post 2000s and above are like interesting as
Yeah,
games.
it was one that sort of like the earlier ones were ambitious, but the later ones were good, if you get what I mean. But it's
Yeah,
sort
which
of
is funny. Like with technology shifts,
yeah,
like you think it'd be the other way around. Like, this is how
yeah,
Final Fantasy went. They try to get more ambitious.
yeah, and then well, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But the other thing I was thinking about is maybe Castlevania. I was thinking briefly crossed my mind Pokemon, but could you really pull? Because I don't think you can just pull off. It's not something that works for a novel.
Not as an art fantasy, anyway. I mean, like,
No, I'm thinking you could. The only way I could ever see it working is if you did a series, if you did a separate series, only aimed at your more adult fans,
yeah,
like your classic fans, because those are the people who are actually buying your games.
that's true. Yeah,
Like in your product. So I wonder if like if they ever like were to come up with a more mature series or like
you have
is
to
it
scrap everything
you,
to a certain extent.
I well see I'm not sure I'm
See,
not sure
DC does that, like to extent, like like how they have they're doing an extreme version now. They had like the Teen Titans Go movie, but now they're doing like a noir rated R live action version. Like they need to learn from DC, even if in an extreme way like that.
yeah I mean like it could be like I would say keep the Saturday morning cartoon going, but like how do you remember at all Pokemon Origins? I don't know that was
That we made up?
no it was the series that they did. They they
I do
they
not. I do not.
they did it
When did
for
they do that?
a couple years ago. It was like a mini series that would like basically followed Red through in the original Kanto games, and they threw their old fans a bone, and people
Was
loved
this
it.
was this a cartoon
Yeah, it
or
was.
what?
It's a
Oh,
cartoon,
well, no.
and people just ate it up, but they never really did anything more like that. So I feel
Oh, I
like
want to watch this now.
yeah, you should. It was really cool, but I mean, I feel like they could actually appeal to people by that. So novels, video games, the
Yes, Q&A
usual.
time.
Q&A time. Um, okay, here's my first one is what book would you turn into a video game? Vice versa.
Oh, wow. What I check? Oh, I know. Wait. Uh, Crunch for limited time. I need to take a minute.
Sure.
I it's actually more choosing between things and actually having not having enough time to think.
No, I gotcha. I gotcha totally.
Hmm.
And Matthew will be thinking, and this makes up for the fact that I left the video for 6 minutes in the middle to use the bathroom.
I think it's a
And
toss up from two games with me. I think possibly the novel Snow Crash or possibly Dune. I'm not sure though.
Dune had a video game.
Yeah, it had a terrible video game, for what I understand.
Yeah, it did. Make a
It's
good
so
Dune one.
Yeah. And it's actually
Interesting.
getting a movie remake from
So I heard.
Dennis Vuvivo, Vuvanillo, or whoever.
Villanueva?
Yeah, Villanueva. Thank you, French Canadians.
That's not a French never mind.
He's French Canadian in real life. You know that, right?
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he is. He has the most interesting accent.
Huh.
He's
I,
making a Dune remake as his next movie, which I'm like,
Dune.
we would never see that without his financial success, which I contributed to by buying tickets to Blade Runner 2049. So I'm very
Bravo,
impressed with
bravo.
myself.
What
So
would you
it was
turn?
either Dune. Well, you don't really know what Snow Crash is. It's really a crying shame. There's like
I
one
I
copy
kind
in
of
our
know.
library system. It's kind of sad.
What just out of curiosity, what kind of game would you make it?
It's hard to say. I'm trying to think of like, I feel like just saying RPG because it seems like complicated storylines seem to be best dealt with it because I really can't see. I could see like the Second Life open world thing with it because that's kind of like what the movie deals with. But after a while, I would like wonder like how more exciting it would be because it kind of takes place in a sort of post-apocalyptic world, but not,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very bleak and like it would be like if you could actually like play it even with the skills of the main character, Hyrule protagonist, like you would it'd be like Dark Souls. So I don't know like how realistic you could do it.
Interesting.
It would be a shooter, I can tell you that.
Mm. All right. So a question for me.
My well, we can go back to your old question was what movie is better than its book it was based on.
I would have to say I think it would be the BBC miniseries, the BBC PBS miniseries of Bleak House versus Bleak House by Charles Dickens. The
Well, I've
actual
never.
the miniseries adaptation of Bleak House I thought was much better than the book because the book itself is actually it's wonderful, but it's also Dickens being his most Dickens, as in I'm still being paid by the word, suckers. So there are
You
some
get a
part.
lot of you get what TV tropes gets door holders or whatever.
I I don't know what it is, but it's just like I'm just like it's not an easy book to read. I mean, there is some of that for the time period, but it's not an easy book to read.
Hmm.
However, the series is really good. It's an excellent plot line. There are some really good actors and actresses in it. Andy Serkis Gollum is in it.
Hmm.
He plays like this deranged Frenchman. It's
Hmm.
it's a lot of fun. It's a really good series. I'd really recommend that to anybody who likes intrigue and sort of melancholy. Also, what's her name? Scully's in it. Gillian Anderson. She's in it too. For those of you who are X Files fans. Speaking of which, the X Files were a lot of fun. We should talk about the X Files sometime. You should watch the X Files. All right. Question for you. What video game place, any place, would you take a vacation? You wouldn't have to live there. You only have to stay there for like a week.
Um, Maybe that floating island from Paper Mario Thousand Year Door where you have like wrestlers and stuff.
Oh,
I don't know if
interesting.
you ever played that game or not, but like the
I've played it with you once or twice.
that would just be cool. I mean, like kind of like party land up there, but it was like there were wrestlers and like all this kind of stuff. That comes to mind. So
That's cool.
yeah.
Nifty.
And I do have one last question for you. Actually, my
Yes.
last grab bag question. I don't know what it says, but oh, it's just a World Series matchup predictions, which I actually have on.
Oh, World Series matchup predictions.
You know, the Phillies are doing well. Like they keep on like I'm not really paying attention to them like I should, but it's like every time like I look at them, they're like in second or first.
Oh my goodness, we're not talking about something nerdy. What are the chances? Actually, well, baseball is kind of the nerdiest of major sports.
That's
Uh,
true.
so I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I think the World Series is going to be. All right, let's see. Who's not gonna do it? Yankees
Well,
aren't going to do it.
all the Ohio teams.
Yankees. I am a huge Yankees fan. I work for the Yankees, but well, I work for the Yankees minor league team. But there's no way in heck. They're just not good enough. Boston, I'd like to say yes, but Boston can't beat the Indians.
Did they win in 2014 or some recent
They
series?
did win. Again, they
I don't know how
won a
much of
few
the original
times
lineup
recently.
they have, but like
Not
it's kind of funny.
much.
I read that it was actually one of the like the or one of the top five least watched World Series televisations or something. It's just ironic because like back in like 2004, it was like like remember like what was the year that they broke the curse?
They broke
2004.
the curse in but it was when they beat the Rockies.
Was that 2002 or four? It was one of the.
Seven, I think.
Oh, okay.
Because
You think
they
I would?
because they beat the Yankees in 2004. Let's see, they beat the Yankees in the ALCS in 2004. Or did they win? Did they win in
Well,
2004?
my question was what World Series went. What was like their because they won the World Series like sometime in the 2000s. And it
They
was
won
like
a
the first
couple in
time.
the 2000s.
Like the first one was like the one where they broke the curse because they hadn't won like 1908 or something.
Yes. There we go. There we go. The World Series 2004. I should know this, but it's tired Emerald. That's right. Boston broke the curse in 2004. They beat the Rockies in 2007. They beat the Rockies in 2007, but they beat the Cardinals they swept the Cardinals in 2004.
I still think that the Phillies had it worse because we started in 1883 and we were like the longest running one team, one franchise in the MLB.
Mm-hmm.
And it was literally 97 years until we from starting to World Series wins. So, and they were like, I don't think Boston came close to that. They didn't have a curse like an official curse like we did, but I don't think it's really fair.
Well,
I think
Boston
we
had the
had it
curse
worse.
of the Bambino because after they traded away Babe Ruth, they didn't win for a long, long, long time.
That's true, and we really didn't have that. I think one year in the 70s when they had like worst record in baseball though.
I'm sure you guys have had it a couple times, but you guys did win in 1980. You beat the Astros.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
no, actually, we actually beat. I read it was a Kansas City Chiefs. Though.
Oh no, I'm sorry. You're right. You beat the Astros in the championship series because you couldn't beat the Astros for the World Series because they are in the American League now. They were in the National League, so you would have had to beat them to get there. I think you guys.
But what I'm saying is, like, it was 97 years for us. Like, for Boston, I don't even think it came close to 100 like it was for us. And they actually had a World Series win behind them. Like, we had nothing.
Yeah. Oh, you did beat the Royals.
Okay.
There you go.
Kansas City Chiefs. That's the other.
Kansas City
that's the-
Chiefs, same sport, whatever. No, but my World Series prediction is I'm weirdly enough I think I'm gonna say Cleveland beats the Dodgers.
Oh, so and that's saying a lot from because I started out this conversation saying it's no Ohio team, but like
Yeah,
that's actually would be saying a lot.
yeah. I say Cleveland beats the Dodgers because even though I feel like Cleveland hasn't done much impressive so far, it's usually I have a weird feeling that they're gonna win this time. I don't know why.
Well, that's how they said about the Eagles and like ended up winning.
Yeah,
you know?
they're underdogs. They're a meh team in the worst division in baseball. But they have the potential to be really good.
And for the record, I count this as something nerdy because unfortunately nobody really cares about baseball as much.
I know, it sucks. Well, there's part of this. It is a point to which it's. All right, here we go. Are you ready for my 5-minute sports rant?
Yes.
Time me. Okay, here we go. Here's the thing with baseball. The thing about baseball is that we've become so obsessed with making it perfect, we've completely forgotten about the fact that it should actually be entertaining. Because now they're talking about, like they talk about getting rid of human umpires for robot umpires. And the simple fact is, who are you going to complain to now? The robot. The robot's not even going to get every call right. It can't. It statistically can't do it. And the thing about that is, once you do that away, who's going to break up fights between teams? Who's going to deal with all the other stuff? Who's going to deal with rules judgments? Are we going to have a call center in New York just dedicated to that? Are people going to have to stand around, instead of watching robots, watching a bunch of overpaid men with facial hair walking around looking confused? I mean, it's become so, it's it's like one of those things, like, we changed the plate contact rules because Buster Posey broke his leg because he doesn't know how to block a darn plate. So we got rid of an interesting thing. So now, because Ben Zobrist says, oh, we need robot umpires, we're gonna get robot umpires. You're getting paid millions of dollars to do this job. It's, it's, umpires get paid significantly less than that.
Yeah, they kind of put them in their own hole with professional sports. Like all my older family says, like how things have changed, like how just the concept of November baseball is like kind of a joke for them, like how it's leaked into that. You
Yeah,
know,
so it's my thing is this: the numbers revolution has done one good thing. It allows for an in-depth analysis of players. It allows you to form better strategies. But the problem is, people have taken it too far, and we've gone into the switching pitchers every 3 minutes, which doesn't actually help your team that much. Because the number of wins that those pitchers get, the number of what they're actually worth to the team, they're worth significantly less than a third string catcher. It's the point where teams are become so obsessed with run prevention with the bullpen, the fact that the strong bullpen is killing baseball because it's slowing the game down. Pitchers aren't pitching for long times anymore. You've created a game where there are more or less, there are just, you're either going to strike out, hit a home run, or walk, and even walks are down. So basically, you're either striking out or hitting a home run, and that just creates such a boring game. I Even though I love baseball, I love it. I'm not sure if I didn't work for a baseball team, I'm not sure I could actually sit through that many games and not be bored. Because it's there was the team I work for is the Trenton Thunder, the Yankees AA affiliate, and they
I thought they're
they
AAA. Where's the AAA at?
Scranton,
Oh,
Scranton,
I didn't know.
Scranton. I've driven past it. I've never been there,
Oh, I thought that
but
the Reading Phillies were in Strand. That would be Oh no, no, they're in
Reading's at
Reading.
Reading.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, they're in Reading.
But the thing about is they only over the last 3 nights, they only had one batter hitting above 240 in the starting lineup. The past 3 nights, and it's just sort of like, so you have guys down there who are batting a buck 89 with 20 home runs. It's like that's not weird now. It's like back in the day, you had, I don't know, you had Rob Deere and Dick Stewart. That's about it. I mean, Dave Kingman had some years like that, but like the fact is that our quest for perfection and our idealization, over idealization of analytics
You're over 5 minutes, by the way.
has
Sorry.
made the game insufferably boring. And even people who used to play baseball, there's a thing, I forget. I was reading a sports article earlier today just about how a bunch of stars from the 70s, 80s, and 90s were saying that that they have trouble sitting through a modern baseball game.
Mm.
These are men who played the game, who work in the game, uh, who talk about, and they're right. Nobody bunts against the shift. Nobody hits the other way against the shift. People are just, you either strike out or you hit it right into the shift, or you just keep swinging away. It's just, and people will say, oh, it's the game. We have to make the game shorter. We have to, shorten them to 7 innings. It's not that. It's, for me, the fundamental problem is with the strategy of the people running the game. They're, it's not something that the league office can say, oh, you need to stop doing this. It's something that the actual management teams and say, hey, maybe the guy we're paying, $10 million a year, maybe he can actually pitch more than 6 innings. He can. People used to do that all the time. And the thing is, there's no dramatic difference in injury rate. If you look back, there's, you could always say they didn't always report injuries in the old days. I mean, that's true, but they don't always report injuries nowadays. The Mets don't regularly report injuries. Not that that's right, but it was like what it was like. It's just like we think we're doing it better, but better has made things worse.
So you're kind of like a traditionalist, but like in the sense that the traditions had it right because they knew, because human nature hasn't changed, and like as much as we think we're losing things to soccer, maybe it really, and football, which actually really isn't true. I read that like
football was always ahead. Football since the '60s has been more popular.
Which is funny because because they introduced the Super Bowl in the '60s. But the funny thing is that like the Super Bowl, like the Patriots versus the Eagles, like that actually was like a low. Maybe it's just the fact that the Patriots were in the Super Bowl again, but it was a very low televised ratings game actually.
Was it?
Yeah, it was one of the least watched, honestly. I mean, it's not like, like barring the conspiracy theories that like if they wanted like the largest cities to play just so they get the most amount of views, like only Dallas, Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York would play each other.
True.
But like Boston is about like 4.5 and Philadelphia's only 6 as a greater metropolitan areas. Maybe that's it. But it's not entirely true that they're losing views to football is my main point.
Right, because their seasons don't overlap that much. It's just the playoffs and the regular season.
Yeah, that's true.
So that was my simple rant. My thing is our quest of perfection, the quest of perfection and the idea of progress has ruined the sport. It's not ruined the sport. I mean, I think it's redeemable.
It's dwarfed it.
And I'm sure eventually the pitching. I feel like people who freak out and say baseball is being ruined. It isn't. Like people are like, oh, the pitching. It's going to swing back around. The pitching batting balance always swings back around. But
so you're saying they've gone to Moneyball on baseball for their own good,
right?
Plus
here's the thing.
Fact that they're kind of stuck in the sort of 1980s sort of stock trader mindset with a pre-1987 Wall Street recession, where they believed in Gaussian bell curves, that like tracking progress was very like solid, very predictable. Until it was too late, that they need to believe in essentially in miracles, in the unexpected, in black swan events, that like, and to stop treating things like, and trying to make the rules so you can box out those miracles, and like trying and like really killing yourself by like having nothing really happen in the game because it's just so boring and there's just so many games.
Yeah, no, it is an interesting. It's an interesting dynamic. There's a lot of things I'd be interested to talk about. Call me an old curmudgeon, but what the heck? I'm down with it. That was my baseball rant. I don't have my my only other thing is I was thinking is the one thing is that everybody's kind of switching to Moneyball now, and my argument for if Moneyball is so great, why didn't the Oakland A's win every single championship after Billy Beane became their general manager? Because to be perfectly honest, with him as their general manager, the A's sucked. They sucked for a long time. This is the first.
And they were played by Brad Pitt.
This is the first good year they've had in.
Or was it played by Brad Pitt?
It was.
Okay.
This is the first good year they've had in a long time. They're a bad team. They play in a terrible stadium. They play, it's like it's. I don't get why it's so lionized, because the team that invented it doesn't work for them. And then the guy who ended up,
Maybe it's just like the fact that like it's like a cultural thing that like just California land is so expensive. They go full business model on themselves to
and
like
then
try
the,
to fix things.
and then the guy that he hired ended up going to some other team. That other team is not doing that. Like the Jonah Hill, the one who Jonah Hill played, went to another team. I think it was the Mets, and well, the Mets. It was either the Mets or the Indians. Either way, they've been disappointments. Um, but I don't know. I the way I'm thinking about this is also I in my free time I run a baseball simulator, and I had basically I had about half the teams run old school, half the teams run new school, and the of the 4 teams that advanced the playoffs in a 20-team league, 3 were old school teams and 1 was new school teams, and none of the playoff races were close.
Hmm.
It's even though it's probably more to do with actual players, but the interesting thing about it is it was very interesting to actually have a playoff game where there were 7 steal attempts in one game, which is something that's unheard of in modern baseball. Is because it's like 1.3 something times a game you might see a steal attempt, which is I'm thinking like back in the 70s we had a lot of running, in the 80s we had almost beautifully balanced baseball. It was something that I don't think, I wonder if people today will ever actually see who weren't alive then. Is because if you look at the 80s, you had amazing batting titles, you had amazing pitching titles, you had amazing stolen base titles. You had you had a very varied and diverse game. In the 70s, you had a lot of running. In the 90s, you had a lot of home runs, but you still had other interesting things happening. But then, sort of in the later 2000s up to now, there's less interesting.
Hmm.
Anyway, that's end of
You
the
can
rant.
also say a lot to the fact that we have bigger stadiums than ever for baseball, but not as big as football.
Yes, and they're
But, like,
still not getting filled.
which is kind of sad because like maybe like what happened originally was like, and again this is like to be like skeptical of statistics, but like the fact that like maybe they projected like growth with like when their stadiums were being planned back when they had, I don't know, like the rules of the 90s and the setup of the 90s and the program of the 90s, but now that they changed it, like they can't really pay to afford. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I definitely understand what you're saying, and also the thing that I think of first
if
is
you go to a stadium like the Reading Phils Stadium is like from 1950, and it's like it's decent. It's like a big college stadium, but now you go to like the we have Valley Iron Pigs, like that really doesn't
that's a
compare.
modern stadium.
Oh yeah,
It's actually a
it was
very
built in
nice stadium.
2008, I think.
It's a
So
very
like
nice stadium.
60 years, almost 60 years later, like there's also a bit more of a population, but like it almost seems like there's more per population. I don't know, like
Well,
it's more complicated, but
even now,
they're bigger. They're bigger because there's no guarantee that they'll necessarily, because that means at least they kept popularity. They at least kept it.
yeah. Well, baseball, they're talking about expanding again, and my thought with
If
expanding
we were
it,
in Mexico, I mean, like they like baseball down there, but
more specifically, they were talking about Nashville, Vancouver, or Montreal,
hmm.
trying to bring baseball back to Montreal, which I don't know if they'd ever successfully do. I mean, for the people in Montreal, I would love to see. I'd love to see the Expos come back.
French baseball players.
Yeah, but the problem is a lot of Montreal fans are getting old. Like the people who remember the Expos. I mean, the Expos left the league in 2004, I think.
Hmm. I think so. Yeah.
Uh, but like, how many of them are actually how many young fans? Like, I don't know how many ones would actually remember.
Yeah.
Oh
It's
wow,
now or now. Never.
we used to have a baseball team.
Yeah, it's like now or never.
Yeah,
Especially since like they might like if anyone who really cared about baseball might just like care for the Blue Jays because there are only 6 million people in Canada. It's not like, and most of their cities are on the border, so like they could just like not necessarily move there, but just root for the Blue Jays. You know.
They could, do Toronto. They could adopt Seattle or Detroit.
Yeah, sort of like how New York, the Yankees are America's team, and Dallas Cowboys are America's team, which I disagree with. But like, there'll be Dallas
Cowboys.
fans. They're Cowboys fans up here. Stuff like
Unfortunately, yes.
that.
All right. Well, anyway, this has been our less than nerdy outro to our extremely nerdy show. Um, wow, this episode actually ran quite long. Matthew, I think this one is one of yours to edit because if mine's the next one. So anyway,
I can, Andrew. Only
yes.
you can edit your baseball rant. Give me the other one instead.
Oh, hush, child. Okay, fine. All right. But anyway, I will see you later. Good evening. What am I saying? It's still it's still the morning. It's still morning, isn't it? Yeah, it is. All right. So, we bid you a fair good morning, internet, and have a lovely day.